Whatever you choose to do, leave tracks. And that means don't do just for yourself, because in the end it's not going to be fully satisfying. You will want to leave the world a little better for your having lived. And there's no satisfaction that a person can gain that's equal to the satisfaction that you get from knowing that you have made another's life, your community, a little better for your effort.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to HMS Unfiltered podcast. I'm Roger Palomino. I'm the outreach director here at Houston Media Source. So those that are asking, what is Houston Media Source? We're public access television, a 501c3 nonprofit that is contracted in the city of Houston to provide free speech programming to our communities. We do this by operating a production studio facility that is also including a net radio station, podcasting, virtual studios, as well as direct pipeline to broadcast cable television. So today we have a very special treat. We have the entire production team of What It Means. We have director, co-writer, and executive producer Miranda Spigener-Sapon. And we also have on-air talent Tasia Mantzoros, Caroline Quigley, Chris Ruggaber, and Andrew Flores. So I just want to thank all of you for joining us today. And I wanted to go ahead and start with Miranda and tell us a little bit about What It Means and how this project came about.
What It Means was around the time when there was talk, because we got started in 2021. I had to go back and think, oh my gosh, this has been such a process. And it was when there was news reports of Roe v. Wade being overturned. And, of course, naturally you should be up in arms because, it's just a mess. So I had got this opportunity, and my rep at the time had presented, hey, how about doing a short film? Because we were just talking, and it was supposed to be part of a series on what it means to be human. And the first option was, let's cover a woman's right to choose and control over her own body. And not the government getting involved. So we were given a budget. It was tiny, but we were given a budget to start with and kind of go from there. Naturally, and not going to go into the horrid details, because if anybody knows making a movie, a whole storm can go. And we just wanted to mainly just tell a story, but I didn't want to do a typical documentary, like, interviewing people and talking heads and things like that. I wanted to do something in spoken word. And Tasia and I were actually she was officing sometimes in the office space where I was at the time. And we were talking about working on a project together anyway. And I think Tasia, we were talking about doing something with spoken word, because she writes spoken word, and she had this beautiful poem that's actually the one. It's called, she'll tell, when it's her turn, she'll tell you the name of it. I think it's Trigger and Traumas, or Trauma and Triggers. It's written down in the press kit. But that was the actual inspiration for the narrative that the Mother Earth character does. And so my assistant at the time, I said, well, you know what? I'd like you to kind of give you an opportunity to co-direct with me, And so we had this project. And so we just kind of grassroots put everybody together, and we got our locations. We went through several rounds of me and Tasia and Grayson were like working on the script, taking her spoken word. I had to get Kristin's story, because I wanted to have two different abortion stories. One of someone who might have been young, like Tasia's story, and not ready to start a family. And then I wanted to have something on an emergency situation, because I had a feeling that if this was overturned, which it did, there would be problems with medical issues, people not having access to, abortions and things like that. And so that's when we were going to do more than two stories. And then we thought, well, it's too much. And we said, how about we have two? So then Kristin was telling me about her story, about the miscarriages she had when her and her husband wanted to have a child together. And so they, again, when she'll tell a little bit in that, and as you can tell, everything is completely her story. It's just told in a spoken word format. And so we just went through the process of finding locations. We, shooting in a real clinic would be hard. We actually shot on a soundstage in a studio. And they actually had the hospital set up, because normally you wouldn't have an ectopic pregnancy or someone with an emergency in the same probably clinic as like a Planned Parenthood or a place that performs, other abortions. But for the sake of the spoken word, it's just taking them the steps from the time they get off the elevator, just the thoughts going through their mind, to the time they get in the lobby, as Tasia is walking you through her thought process. And then she's sitting in the lobby holding the pamphlet. And then she moves into the waiting room. And then we kind of pan over to Caroline, when she goes into the story, Chris's story. And then you have the time when obviously a number is called and it's their turn to go up to the front desk, and they're filling out the paperwork, to when they're sitting in the room in the hospital gown, whether they're in a bed or whatever. So showing every step of the way, it was very important. And then the Mother Earth is just a narrative telling the overall story. Like at the end, when we have the each woman is standing on the mountains, and we filmed up in the Malibu hills. It was hot that day. The sun was beating down, even for Malibu with the ocean there. I mean, you can ask the girls, it was hot. And
Wow.
But we got it done. We had to pin it, trying to get everybody to the location. When you're filming up in the hills or the mountains, it's kind of hard. But yeah, it all started with just artists collaborating and saying, hey, let's do it. I think me and Sia wanted to do something, and then with this opportunity, and literally while we were filming, they overturned Roe v. Wade. So
Wow.
And then we were trying to get it out as quick as we could, and there was a lot of issues that happened. We lost our funding. I ended up firing my manager because of that. It was just a lot of stuff. I call this the little film that could. So getting the recent win, all that kind of stuff was just it was humbling, because at the end of the day, it always ends up falling on the director or the filmmaker. I'm like, we got to get this done. And, both Caroline and Tasia, they're saying, don't give up on it. Your message is important,
Yeah.
And you're like, yes, I know. And then finally, with the election coming up, I said, I got to get this finished. We got to get this out. We need to get this out in as many places as we can. And let's just do the film festival circuit, and that's where we'll get some exposure. And so and it's been doing well, as you can see from some of the press already. But yeah.
And it is a very powerful piece after watching it too, just from beginning to end. And Mel and I have talked about that body autonomy, how important that is, and it doesn't matter how much time passes by. It seems like this is something that makes a resurgence over and over again. And that brings me actually to Sia, because I know you were also involved with this project. Tell us some of your background as far as like how you came about with getting involved with what it means.
So as Miranda said, we were working out of the same office at the time, and she shared this with me, and I told her that I had written an excerpt for a novel that I'm writing, and my character experiences an abortion in the very beginning of the story. And so I said, hey, I have this excerpt. Let me know what you think about it. Because she told me, I'm doing this documentary on abortion. So I sent it to her, and she said, wow, this is really powerful. Would you want to write Kristin's story as well? And I said, absolutely. And, it was rewriting. I had to rewrite it, of course, for this project. So I had to relive it, in other words. And writing Kristin's story was just, as I had bullets of her story, so I didn't get to really even talk. I wish I would have talked to Kristin more, but I had bullets and notes from Miranda's interview with her to give me, and that's how I wrote this story. And I was just, putting myself in her shoes as someone who's gone through it for a completely different reason, was just really, really powerful. It was a really powerful experience. But yeah, so that's how I got involved with Miranda. She mentioned it. I had something, I had experienced it, and so I shared my story with her, and then she asked me to write the spoken word for it.
Yeah, and there's a line that you deliver that also stood out for me where you say a fetus is valued more than a life. So tell us what this means for you.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of programs that are in in the process of being cut. Public education, there's a lot of public mental health needs in schools that are also not being addressed. Funding's being cut. And then obviously there is the lack of gun control, or not even gun control in a sense, just making it harder for people to obtain guns. If you look at the instances in mass shootings, they obtain the guns legally. And had there been maybe a cooling off process or some type of something, so there's all these laws and things, and there isn't much in place at the time. As I mentioned in the spoken word, I was volunteering with New York Cares at the time, and I worked a lot with kids in women and children's shelters. And so, I mean, those are great, but those are nonprofits who are setting those up, not the government. So it just kind of made it abundantly clear at that time that, like, there aren't enough policies and laws that are being strengthened to protect children. If anything, they're trying to be diminished for the benefit of taxpayers. But, what kind of society are we if we're not protecting our children, who are our most vulnerable?
Absolutely, yes. And I'm in a complete agreement with you. And I also wanted to go ahead and ask Caroline about her preparation for the character. And I love both of your characters, how you look at the camera and you talk about, what you're going through and your experiences. So Caroline, tell us what your process was like preparing for this.
Yes. So this is one of my favorite things I've ever had the opportunity to work on. I got to come onto the project because Tasia and I were in a rom-com directed by Brian Hooks together. And so we met and connected instantly. We're both like actors, we're both very witchy people, and we just connected. And so when she got on board for What It Means, she called me and asked if I would be interested to be a part of it. And immediately I was like, yes, I don't even need to read the script. Like, I'll play a tree in it. I don't care. And so when I read the script the first time, I remember I just couldn't stop crying. And that was actually like, that stayed through my process the entire time, memorizing all of that material. Like, I felt this well of emotion every time I was going through it, because I felt like to have the honor and also the responsibility of telling a real person's story, I wanted to do it justice and tell it as though it was my own, and for all of the other women who have experienced any kind of situation like this on any end of the spectrum. So I just would read through over and over, saying it out loud. And it was one of the only times in my life as an actor I just was like so connected, like without even having to try. And I think that's really a testament to the writing by these beautiful women, because it just opened up. It felt as though it was my story, and it's everyone's story here. So that was kind of how I went about memorizing. It just felt so easeful. And then when it came time to shoot, it just was all there for me. Like, it was all all of that work was in the background and I could just let it all come through.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that. And that also brings me to Chris Ruggaber, because I know the ectopic pregnancy story was based on your experiences. So tell us your involvement with this project and what it means for you.
Well, I'm very grateful. I'm grateful to Miranda mostly for bringing this story because about 2 weeks ago, a girl from Indiana passed away because of the same problem. Mm-hmm. And it needs to be told. There's no choice with an ectopic pregnancy. No choice at all. You either lose the baby or you die. And I'm grateful for the time that I've had since that it was a long time ago, it was back in the 90s. And the way Caroline was able to portray me, I was grateful. She's so beautiful and so eloquent. And Tasia's words really were from my heart too. So it's just at my age, it's good to know that this is being addressed in such a critical time in our history.
Absolutely. And that brings me to Andrew, the associate producer of the project. So how did you first come on board with these wonderful women for this project?
Well, I've known Miranda since 96, and so we work on different types of little projects here and there. And so we lost contact over through the years, but then it was most recently, I guess, through Facebook that we were able to connect. And we, projects, and then she told me about this. And so that's where I started going to the astronaut bar where I saw you in connection with meeting and networking with different people. And I said, my friend Miranda has something that maybe we can relate to. And that's how I was able to present this to you. And so I'm also looking at different women's groups that maybe perhaps this could be promoted for them to look at and maybe see people's plight as to what's going on, because the law is it's really not quite clear, as far as what is necessary for what a lady needs or what is necessary. So it's really a hot topic. And of course, in an election year, they need that education to know what's going on.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I think one of the most powerful weapons an artist can have is their voice. And this film really speaks a million. I really love the intersectionality too, especially at the very end. So I wanted to ask you, Miranda, how was that choice for you as far as like adding that at the very end of the film, where they make that statement, what it means, and then they add, all the different categories.
Come on, baby, come on.
Yeah. The general thing was of the message, as you could, the title of the film is called What It Means, with ... And the ... means it's to stand for basically what it means to be human. That's why when it smashes to black at the end and it says to be human, I wanted to the original vision of that last part was going to be a collage of people. Like I was collecting, and I had already started collecting some short videos from different people, like Black, white, Latino, Asian, disabled, transgender. I was collecting different statements for them to say the line, to be transgender, to be indigenous. And then it turned out to be a lot harder. And with just some of the cuts and the timing, I wasn't able to really get it. And then I was getting these really wonky videos that weren't like, I don't mind it looking a little grassroots, or, it could be shot in vertical and I could work around that, but it was just really not coming across with the message. And so I ended up just doing that dialogue myself. So I actually did the VO on that. I wasn't supposed to do the voiceover, but I felt like it was different than having Vivian do it, because then having her say to be human at the end, so that way it's a transition to have a different voice from the Mother Earth narrator. Because her character, and Vivian couldn't be here, but her character was to symbolize telling the stories. It's connecting us with Earth and our own selves, and that's why we call her the Mother Earth character. And kind of going through down to how we were going to costume her for the whole thing, to how you notice she matches the environment. That was my duster, by the wonderful Galina Sobolev, who gave me a duster at a premiere of my company a while back. We were doing a soft launch, and she said, "Oh, this is for you. It looks great." And I was like, "Oh, this will go great with her dress." And it was just a perfect, like, earthy kind of thing. And so when we had that ending and you see standing on the mountain, and it's tethering everybody to what it means and what's important. And so that message at the end is also to lead into, because I still want to find a way to do another series, like I said, I have a meeting tomorrow and another day to someone that's interested in distribution. This came from hearing that we won Best Documentary. So I'm like, oh, now we can sell it and we can get this thing, we can get things covered and some of the debts covered that from it. Just, the main thing was to get the message out there. And so when we did, I would like to, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the meeting. It would be so wonderful to do and have them still done in the spoken word, do another 17-minute or so. And I want to hit disabled people next. And then maybe the third one be LGBTQ plus, and then, different races, but, people with disabilities tends to also be, I think we were talking about that in an earlier intro call about, when you were talking about the community screening, we're also wanting to do with you guys, where we were going to have a voting thing with like transgender people and people who are disabled who cannot get access to benefits. And that's what that closing narrative ties in. It's starting with something like just women's rights and then the next one, what about disabled? What about, like, parents who have, children with mental health issues or children on the spectrum, or people who nonverbal. It probably worries you to no end that, oh my God, you got to be saving for a trust, or you got to be thinking if something, God forbid, happens to you, you're constantly thinking, what is someone going to be there to take them to dinners, to take them to lunches? Is someone, and there's, I don't want to plug it just yet, but there's a really, I'll say it offline, but there's a really cool foundation that started that, for an actor that I admire their work a lot, that started a foundation for that because they have a son that's covered. And I thought that would be perfect to tie into that too. And so there's just so many things that we can go from. And then again, the different communities. And that's where what it means starts, because at the end of the day, we're all human. And we all need to be able to coexist. Everybody has a right to work, to create, to marry who they want, whatever, and not have government officials telling you what to do, and just like, I got super angry when promoting the film, and I don't do that too often on social media, but when I heard about what Kristin said about the Indiana woman, and I thought Kristin was from Indiana, imagine if that all got passed, and people that personally, everybody knows somebody, the woman in Georgia, and we should say their names. I think it's Tasia in Indiana is the one that died, and now her husband's a widow, just like what was said in when Caroline's delivering the monologue. She goes, my husband would be a widow and my kids would be motherless. Well, now that woman's, Tasia's 1-year-old daughter has no mom, and her dad has no wife, because she couldn't get access, because lawmakers chose not to give her the care and the option to live. because nobody lives in those situations, you know. And there's just so many like misnomers and things like back and forth and stuff going on that we just have to think about, you know. And there's so much misinformation, and people would say, oh well, there's you know, just so much going on, you know, that we just need to really get this message out. And that's why the importance of what it means, because it is what it means to be human. And I want to continue the stories. And like I said, maybe one of these distributions will help lead us, and we can actually contract and have a real series. So
Yeah.
it would be fantastic. And not, but it all started with this one film and a message that needed to get out. And so,
well, and
yeah.
if I can just cut in real quick, I'm Mel, the tech person. I work with Roger. Yeah, I wanted to thank y'all for one, for contributing your voices and your talents to this story too, because it isn't, like you say, it isn't talked about enough, all of our lived experiences. And we see this in the world around us all the time. I think it's the saddest thing that every time there's an election, there are a lot of communities who are really afraid. Like they are afraid for their lives, for their loved ones' lives. It doesn't end. And I don't think, you know, in a country we claim is a first world country, and, you know, supposedly, you know, the American dream and the right to freedom and all that, I don't think we should have any communities that have to feel that kind of fear every time there's an election in their locality or in the federal scale. I think we should have the confidence, whoever gets into office, to say they're going to listen to us. They're going to hear what our trials are, what our sufferings are, you know, what our stories are, and understand that no one should have to die for lack of a simple medical procedure that should be available to anyone. You know, no one should have to be scared that their loved ones might not be able to make it in society or anything else because they're trans, because they're disabled, because, you know, all the many intersections of what you mentioned is our life. And yeah, we talked about that because I went to a workshop that was hosted here in Texas about voting rights. And it was hosted by the local trans group foundation, who brought in the local election committee to talk about how you can get access and how you can vote and what you need to bring with you and IDs and everything, because that's a very practical reality too for the trans community. You have to bring your photo ID with you to vote. And if you don't match your identity with your photo ID, how do you get around that? Everyone should have the right to vote, but then they make these little difficulties that you have to figure out, well, okay, how, and then if you do have a problem at the booth, because not everyone's trained appropriately to adhere to every person, who do you call? Who do you outreach to if you feel like your voting voice is being oppressed? So there's so many ways. And then on top of that, they brought in a woman who represented the disabilities while voting section, who talked to us. And I didn't realize this at the time, but apparently, even though we have, you know, marriage equality, you know, we fought that fight for LGBT, but we still don't have marriage equality for disabled people, because they are restricted. If you're on benefits for disabilities, you have an income level that you have to remain under. And so if you get married, that increases your income. That means they're going to kick you off of those funds. And so there's a lot of people who can't get married. There was a sad story she told me about two people who had to get apartment buildings next to each other because they couldn't live together. They couldn't get married because they would be kicked off their disabilities. So yeah, there's so many things that we need to address in our society, and so many things we need to not be afraid of talking about, because it affects all of us. You know, body autonomy affects all of us.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted, like, with the disabilities thing, and I think I saw a tweet the other day. I don't know if it was from George Takei or who was it that put it, but they said that if there's a question and you're denied, you can ask for a provisional ballot. And not a lot of people do not know that. And it's like, so if you're transgender or you have a disability and they're not allowing you, by law, if you ask for a provisional, they have to let you vote. And so that's something that everybody, I think they're probably telling them that in these meetings you're going to, and that's great. And the disabilities thing, the reason why I want to tackle that next is my business partner, and many of you guys, y'all all know Devonna Prinzi. She wanted to be on this too, but she's still in Florida now, and she's in evac for hurricane, and so it was just going to be too much. And then she was finally going to say, I'm going to be on the call, and I was going to send you her bio, and then the hurricane happened, so she needs to go and just make sure she's safe. And so it's like, gosh, they're getting back-to-back hurricanes. But anyway, and but she's literally physically disabled because of a spinal injury from a car accident. So, and she still rock stars, is a business partner, getting things done, helped smooth things over when I had the manager issues that was causing problems with the film, and then we all got to where we are today, and now we have a finished film. And so she still rocks it out. But having, disabilities, the things you deal with in hospitals and healthcare, and it's, you would think, being in a first world country, we wouldn't have this problem. And apparently we've got third world mentality seeping in, depending, if one person is elected again, that could just, all this is going to go to hell. I'm not sure. I know that's not a minor curse word. I know this is with access, but I didn't know that. I was trying to watch language. So
well, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
We want to make sure all people are included, including
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is with artists and filmmakers, there's F-bombs and stuff like that. In our podcast, I always tell people, no, you're fine. Just try not to do it too much, but we're okay. If you're passionate, go ahead. But it's just the message,
Yeah, and this is a very important message too, and I just want to congratulate all of you for bringing this narrative to light and letting everyone know, and with it being so intersectional, how it qualifies for so many different film festivals too. So I'm glad that there is going to be a continuing series, Miranda, that you were going to be working on. And again, I just want to thank you, Miranda, Spigener-Sapon, Chris, Ruggaber, Tasia Mantzoros, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and Caroline Quigley for joining us tonight, or today, actually. And last but not least, Andrew Flores as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us on. And like I said, Texas is very important for, because Texas was never like this. It was more balanced. And so it's very important that we have screenings in states like, Indiana or Texas or North Carolina or anywhere it's a battleground state, because those are the areas. Arizona. I think we're going to have a screening coming up in Virginia tied to some politicians, because my aunt's a filmmaker. She's an award-winning documentary filmmaker, and she lives in Virginia. And so when she gets back sometime in October, she's going to present it to some groups. So we'll see how that goes.
That's excellent.
But I don't know exactly when, but she's gonna see what she can, and but yeah, and a thank to the whole crew. I mean, like I said, Grace and Art, who helped co-direct and co-write the screenplay. Everybody had something. The beautiful cinematography was Christopher Alden. He did an excellent job. Nate, who did the music score, and Toby Pipes, who let us use the song in the elevators. Toby Pipes is from he's actually in Texas. He's if you've ever heard of a band called Deep Blue Something.
Yes.
Yeah. He's one of the founding members of that, but he's also a composer and still works in music, and the band's still together. But him and Nolan Thies, he works on Broadway. He's out of New York. They do collaborations together, and the song in the elevator is actually called, it was titled "This Is Life." And I thought, ooh, that's kind of fits. And so I had to lower it down because we had shooting in an elevator not easy. And that's why the sound sounds a little wobbly. We did the best we could on that. That was our only issues, where we were having sound issues. But yeah, so between you know, the score and all that kind of stuff, and special thanks to the Best Shorts Film Festival. Tasia and I were there at the award show, and so she jumped up on the stage with me, and we backed each other up on all our thanks, because you get up there and you're like, oh my God, we actually won. Just to be nominated was exciting, and then the fact when they call your name, you're like, wait, what? Okay, now I'm gonna forget. Maybe I should have wrote a speech. You know how it is, and
you never prep when you're supposed to.
You never do. And then
it takes you by surprise.
And even in a film festival, it's not like the Oscars where they'll play the music or something. You're trying to be conscientious because you don't want to take time from everybody else. And I'm going, oh my God. And then I was like, okay, I'm so glad someone else was on the stage here, because that way it kind of backed up. But yeah, it was just that was amazing, and just some of the opportunities coming because of that. They put on that it was an inaugural year for them because they started it, and I thought they did a great job, because film festivals are a lot, and just to be a part of their, when we submitted and got official selection, and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm nominated. Oh, what? And then we won, and there was really good competition. One about a group forming a skate park, and then there was one about for like the community, and then there was one on dealing with some homelessness and some issues in Baltimore, and they were both. That one was such a powerful film, but the fact that I was like, wow, that people are resonating with this message. And yeah, again, the thanks, from Nate Munez, who did our score, to Toby, to Chris Alden, who did the DP, my co-director Grayson. We had a small but cool, efficient crew, and Devana, who helped produce. Andrew came on. You said how it began. We worked together for years. We reconnected 12 years ago, via Facebook to reconnect, and then he kind of came in on the post-production side and helping produce and help us get it marketed out to the community screenings, and that's kind of coming in. He kind of produces projects with us internally, and so yeah, just everybody, and of course Tasia and Caroline and Kristin and everybody. It's just such a beautiful job, and thanking everybody for being a part of it, and thanks to HMS and
and we
like
we
I
want to
said,
thank you.
And I edited my first doc I did in 2000 or 99 at y'all's old facility, with Alex.
Right.
It's a start. Everyone starts in public access. That's right. Kind of our catchphrase around it.
But what's cool about it is, y'all are a little different than most. Y'all have an arts outreach, and it kind of gives a voice, to stuff. So it's always good to come back and promote and see what resources, because it's got some kind of cool stuff.
Well, and a big part of some of our outreach right now is actually outreaching specifically to shorts filmmakers, because I know I'm a shorts filmmaker myself. A lot of times you make something because, again, it's the mission, it's the voice. You want to get that out there, but you don't have a plan for distribution. You don't have you don't even really have a plan to make your money back from a project. You feel like this needs to be out there. My voice needs to be out there. The people I collaborate need to be out there, their voices. And you do it for the passion of it. But it's a crime to me because, like you said, you go to a film festival and you see so many wonderful short films that touch on these truly, like, plumbing the depths of humanity kind of narratives and kind of connections. It's like, to me, it's a crime that a short like y'all made, the words, the visuals, everything, it feels so raw that it's like it will connect to everybody. Like everyone should have an ability to see this across any platform. And so thankfully nowadays you get online international platforms that will get content that you can submit to them, and they will screen it accessible to different communities. There's some for LGBT, there's some for disabilities, there's just general purpose ones too. But on the TV, there's still no real outreach to that. So we were like trying to figure out, okay, we have so many film festivals in Texas. We know people because a lot of us have worked on film festivals. So it's like, how do we create a component to where we can outreach to y'all as the filmmakers and be like, look, if you don't have anywhere else to show this, bring it to public access, show it here, you know, we'll run it through rotation endlessly, you know, and who knows who will see it. You never can tell who's going to be tuning in late night or early or whatever and just catch something. That's how I saw most of the great things I saw growing up. It's how I saw LGBT films before I even knew what that was on late night movie channels or whatever else. And you're like, oh, hey, you know, I may identify with that. You know, so it's like, it's just wonder of stumbling onto something that talks to you on a very personal level, and you're like, you feel seen, you feel represented. And so to have y'all's voices, to have your experiences go up here and be seen is very meaningful for us to be able to outreach like that to the community. And I'm so happy that y'all are going to continue this in a series, because I think, you know, you could make this into a feature if you did like the anthology kind of format for distribution. So, you know, don't let that be off the table. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, depending on what they want to do and how they want to fund it or whatnot, it could be a series of shorts, or they could just be edited together in some kind of anthology or whatever. I'm definitely open onto whatever on that, because it is called What It Means. It's not just what it means to be faced with a choice, you know, and then you got the disability, because in a way the anthology that all that's on the table. But yeah, I mean, and that's why I said, you know, while it's in the festival circuit, while it's you know, going through community screening phase, I said, yeah, let's just, if we can run it in rotation after the premiere, you know, you can give me all the channels where people can watch it. If it's, if they don't have it, if there's an online code, whatever, you can give me all that details, but anything to get the exposure so people can see it. And then as soon as distribution comes in, then I'll say like, okay, now we got to stop. but you know, in the meantime, because the ultimate goal, you know, it's just whatever we can do to just keep the message out. But I hope I wasn't too wordy. It's just, you know, it's a passion, and I'm glad I finished it, because like I said, it got really stressful trying to, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, that's happened to me twice. It's happened to me twice where I had reps that interfered. I have a feature coming out and I was so excited to get it optioned, and it's a drama and it's on a mental health. And that one, it has a mental health message. And that was the same thing. I had an agent that I ended up firing over that project. I fired my manager over this project. And I said, okay, you know, that's it. You know, you get excited as a filmmaker. This is a tough business, you know, and you got to deal with so much, but you got to keep at it. And when you work hard and you find out you've got a project, but even if it's a tiny budget, hey, it's a project that's going somewhere. And then someone does something, and then you're like, oh, it can be earth shattering. But then sometimes you just got to pull up your bootstraps and say, we got to get this out, you know. And now the opportunities are coming because I didn't give up on it.
That's right.
And just everybody's still, I have to comment on Tasia's background. I feel like I want to sink into that. I don't know. She always has cool backgrounds. I don't know where you're sitting, but that's a really cool, awesome background.
This is my partner's recording studio. He's a Grammy Award winning producer. So I'm in a very special place where some legends have recorded in here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, again, I wanted to thank all of you for joining us on HMS Unfiltered podcast. I know you're going to have more success with this film, What It Means, and those of us that want to tune in and find out more about it, to follow each of you on social media as well. Thank you to all of you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for creating this opportunity.
I ain't gonna let the administration turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on